This story explores themes of disappearance, psychological suspense, and unsettling events, which some listeners may find intense. Imagine a sound that rips through the quiet of your life. A sound so profoundly wrong, so utterly out of place, that once heard, you can never unhear it. For Jessica Miller, it wasn't a scream, not exactly. It was the sound of her sister's voice, Emily, warped by static and distance, but undeniably filled with a terror so raw it felt like a physical blow. And then just as quickly the line went dead. That was the last call. The last call from a roadside phone booth, miles from anywhere, in the dead of a storm-swept night. Jessica had always been the grounded one, the pragmatic older sister to Emily's free spirit. Emily, with her bright, inquisitive eyes and a laugh that could light up a room, was a whirlwind, always chasing the next adventure, the next artistic inspiration. She was an aspiring photographer, constantly on the move, seeking out forgotten landscapes and hidden beauty in the overlooked corners of America. This particular trip, however, felt different. Emily had been driving east, from her apartment in Denver, aiming for a small remote artist's retreat tucked away in the Catskill Mountains of New York. It was meant to be a quiet journey, a chance to reconnect with nature, to find new perspectives for her portfolio. She'd promised to call every night, a routine they'd established since Emily started her cross-country ventures. But on that Tuesday night, the call came at an ungodly hour, 2:15 a.m. Jessica had been jolted awake by the insistent ringing of her landline, an antique relic she kept purely for nostalgic reasons and as a backup. Her cell phone, as always, was silenced and charging by her bed. Groggily, she'd fumbled for the receiver, her mind still hazy with sleep, expecting a wrong number or perhaps a late-night work emergency from her office. Instead, she heard the frantic, desperate voice of her little sister. "Jess? Oh God, Jessica. I don't know where I am." The words were rushed, breathless, punctuated by ragged gasps. Jessica's heart instantly seized. Emily was always so confident, so composed. To hear her sounding so utterly lost, so profoundly terrified, sent an icy jolt through Jessica's veins. "Eh? Emily, what's wrong? Where are you? Are you okay?" Jessica scrambled upright in bed, her eyes darting around her familiar, comforting bedroom as if the answers might be hidden in the shadows. "My phone, it died. No signal for miles. Pulled over. I saw this phone booth. It's ancient, Jess. Like something out of a horror movie." Emily's voice was barely a whisper now, thick with fear. "I just needed to call you. I just needed to hear your voice." Jessica tried to keep her own voice steady, to project calm she didn't feel. "Okay, I'm okay. Just breathe. Tell me where you are. What do you see? Can you read any road signs?" There was a pause, a moment of distorted silence on the line, broken only by the faint, rhythmic drumming of rain against glass, a sound that Jessica would later replay endlessly in her mind. Then Emily spoke again, her voice a notch higher, tinged with a new, sharper edge of panic. "It's so dark out here, Jess. The highway, it's just black. And there's this sound, this awful scraping sound. It's getting closer. I think someone's out here." Jessica felt a cold dread begin to coil in her stomach. "Someone? Emily, who? What do you mean scraping? Is it a car? A truck?" She was already swinging her legs out of bed, her bare feet hitting the cold hardwood floor. Her mind raced, trying to picture Emily alone, in some godforsaken phone booth, miles from civilization. Why hadn't she just stayed in her car? Why was she so scared? "I don't know, Jess. It's not a car. It's like metal dragging. And the wind is howling. This place is so creepy. The lights are flickering in here. I just want to leave, but I can't. I can't see anything. I think someone just walked past the booth, Jess. Oh God, they're outside. I can see a shadow." Jessica's breath hitched. "Emily, listen to me. Stay calm. Lock the door to the phone booth if you can. Is there a handle? A latch? Just stay put. I'm going to call the highway patrol. I'm going to find you. Just tell me what road you're on, anything." But Emily wasn't listening. Her words tumbled out, a torrent of pure, unadulterated fear. "They're just standing there, Jess. Right outside. They're not moving. Just watching the booth. I think they know I'm in here. Oh God, Jess, I hear them breathing. I hear them breathing right on the other side of the glass." Her voice cracked, dissolving into a ragged sob. "It's cold, Jess. So cold. And the phone booth. It smells like rust and something else, something foul. I don't like this. I don't like this at all." Then a sudden sharp clang echoed through the phone line, a sound like heavy metal striking glass, followed by a sickening crunch. Emily let out a short, choked gasp, a sound that was less a scream and more an involuntary expulsion of air. Immediately after, the line went dead. Not a click, not a dial tone. Just an abrupt, profound silence that swallowed her sister's terror whole. Jessica stood frozen, the receiver pressed to her ear, listening to the deafening emptiness. "Emily? Emily?" She shouted into the void, her voice raw. "Emily, are you there? What happened?" She slammed the receiver back onto its cradle, then frantically picked it up again, dialing Emily's cell phone number, knowing it was futile. It went straight to voicemail. She tried again and again, her fingers trembling, her heart hammering against her ribs. Each ring, each automated message was a punch to her gut. No answer. Nothing. Just the chilling echo of Emily's terrified last words, the phantom clang, and that horrific cut-off gasp. Panic, cold and absolute, began to set in. Jessica knew with a certainty that clawed at her insides that something terrible had just happened. Emily wasn't one for pranks, and this wasn't just a dropped call. The fear in her sister's voice had been too real, too visceral. The sudden violent end to the call felt like a punctuation mark on a nightmare. She spent the next hour in a blur of frantic activity. She called the state police, her voice shaking as she recounted the impossible story of a phone call from a phantom booth. They were polite but skeptical, asking for specific locations, highway numbers, anything concrete. Jessica had nothing. Emily had been too scared, too disoriented to provide any details. All Jessica could offer was a vague description of a lonely highway, a storm, and a decaying phone booth. Without a precise location, the police explained, their hands were tied. It was a vast network of roads out there, and phone booths, though rare, weren't unheard of. They promised to put out an alert, to check with local patrols in the general direction Emily had been headed, but the lack of information was a severe hindrance. As dawn slowly broke, painting the sky with a sickly gray light, Jessica was still pacing her living room, clutching her cell phone, willing it to ring. She had tried Emily's number countless times, texted her, even left increasingly desperate voicemails. Nothing. It was as if her sister had simply vanished into thin air, swallowed whole by the night, leaving behind only the chilling memory of that last, terrifying call. The police had told her to wait, to give it time, that Emily might have simply lost signal again, or found a motel for the night. But Jessica knew. She knew the sound of true fear, and she knew the finality of that cut-off line. Emily was not just lost. Emily was gone, and the only clue, the only thread leading into the darkness, was that ancient, rusting phone booth on a desolate roadside, somewhere out there in the vast, unforgiving American landscape. A phone booth that held the secret of Emily Miller's last, desperate moments. And Jessica was going to find it. She was going to find out exactly what happened, no matter what. She was going to find out exactly what happened, no matter what. The first step was to retrace Emily's last known movements, but with a crucial difference. Jessica wasn't looking for Emily. She was looking for the source of Emily's last call. Her own phone records became the immediate focus. Sifting through months of digital data, she found it. The incoming call, exactly when Emily had vanished. The duration was barely a minute, a desperate, truncated plea. And there it was, the originating number. Not a blocked number, not an unknown caller, but a standard 10-digit sequence. A landline number. Her heart hammered. This was it. This was the thread she needed to pull. Jessica typed the number into a search engine. The results were sparse, mostly old directory listings from decades past, but one thing became clear. It was indeed a payphone number, specifically registered to a regional telecommunications company that had long since been absorbed by a larger national conglomerate. The address associated with the number was vague, often just listed as Highway 70 West or Rural Route 12. This was going to be harder than she thought. She spent the next 2 days on the phone, navigating a labyrinth of automated menus and unhelpful customer service representatives. Each call was a battle against bureaucracy, a desperate plea for information that seemed trivial to everyone but her. "We cannot disclose the physical location of a public access line for privacy reasons," was the constant refrain. "That information is proprietary. We no longer maintain detailed records for payphones installed before the year 2000. Emily had disappeared 5 years ago, but the phone itself could have been there for decades. Jessica refused to give up. She called the corporate office, then the archives department, then a specialized division she found mentioned in a forgotten online forum dedicated to preserving historical telecommunications infrastructure. She explained her situation, emphasizing the missing person aspect, the police investigation, the desperation. She even hinted vaguely that she was working with law enforcement, a white lie she hoped would lend her credibility. Most people hung up. Some promised to look into it and never called back. Finally, on the third day, after what felt like her 100th call, she reached a woman named Brenda in the Legacy Assets Management Department. Brenda sounded tired, her voice raspy, but there was a hint of something else, perhaps a flicker of empathy. Jessica poured out the entire story, detailing the police's dead end, the significance of the phone booth, the image of Emily's terrified face. There was a long silence on the other end. Jessica held her breath, convinced Brenda was about to deliver another polite refusal. "Look, honey," Brenda finally said, her voice softer than before. "I'm not supposed to do this. Company policy is strict. But I've been here 30 years. I remember when we had 1,000 payphones in this state alone. I've seen things. And I have a daughter your age." Jessica's heart leaped. "Please, Brenda. Anything." "That number," Brenda continued. "It's an old exchange. A very specific one. Back in the day before cell phones, that prefix was primarily assigned to a handful of payphones along a particular stretch of road. Highway 70, west of the town of Havenwood. There were 3, maybe 4 booths along a 50-mile radius. One near a truck stop that burned down years ago, one at a roadside diner that went out of business, and there was one other, isolated, about 12 miles west of Havenwood, near a defunct rest stop. Always had trouble with that one. The line would go out in storms. 12 miles west of Havenwood. Isolated. Defunct rest stop. Jessica felt a surge of adrenaline so potent it made her hands tremble. "Can you narrow it down further, Brenda? Is there a precise address?" "Not a precise street number, no. Not for a payphone from that era," Brenda sighed. "But I can give you the GPS coordinates for the old rest stop. It was never officially decommissioned from our records, just abandoned. The booth might be gone, mind you. Vandalism, weather, nature reclaiming it. But if it's anywhere, it's there. That's the most likely candidate for an isolated booth on that stretch." Brenda recited a set of coordinates, and Jessica frantically scribbled them down, her pen digging into the paper. She thanked Brenda profusely, her voice thick with emotion. Brenda simply told her to be careful, then hung up. The next morning, Jessica was on the road. Havenwood was a blink-and-you-miss kind of town, nestled deep in a valley where the mountains began to flatten into plains. It was roughly a 5-hour drive from her apartment, a journey that felt both impossibly long and terrifyingly short. The landscape outside her window gradually transformed from bustling cityscapes to rolling hills, then to vast stretches of open country, dotted with wind farms and forgotten farmhouses. The sky seemed larger here, the silence deeper. As she drove, a sense of unease settled over her. This wasn't just a drive. It was a pilgrimage into the unknown. Emily had been out here alone, desperate. What had happened to her? What had driven her to a payphone in the middle of nowhere? Following the GPS, she bypassed Havenwood, turning onto Highway 70. The road sign was faded, the paint peeling. The highway itself was less traveled now, an older route bypassed by a newer, faster interstate. Trucks were scarce, replaced by the occasional beat-up pickup or an RV lumbering towards some distant destination. The miles ticked by slowly, each one pulling her deeper into the desolate landscape. Finally, her GPS chimed, indicating she was approaching her destination. She slowed down, peering through the dusty windshield. On her right, the road widened slightly, revealing a crumbling asphalt lot, choked with weeds and cracked by years of neglect. This was it. The defunct rest stop. It was a ghost of a place. A dilapidated brick building, once a restroom and perhaps a small visitor center, stood boarded up, its windows shattered. Graffiti marred its walls, faded messages from a forgotten era. The air was still, heavy with the scent of dry earth and decay. A lone skeletal oak tree stood nearby, its branches gnarled and bare. And then she saw it. Nestled beneath the gnarled oak, partially obscured by overgrown bushes and taller weeds, stood the phone booth. It was a relic, a monument to a bygone era. The once bright red paint was faded to a dull rust, peeling in places to reveal the gray metal beneath. The glass panels were grimy, some cracked, one completely missing. The door hung slightly ajar, creaking faintly in the almost imperceptible breeze. It looked like something out of a horror movie, a sentinel of forgotten conversations and desperate calls. Jessica parked her car a safe distance away and got out, her heart thumping against her ribs. The silence here was profound, broken only by the distant hum of the wind and the crunch of her boots on the gravel. Every step felt heavy, each breath a conscious effort. This was where Emily had stood. This was where her voice, filled with terror, had echoed into the vast emptiness. She approached the booth slowly, cautiously, as if it might suddenly reveal some hidden danger. She pushed the door open the rest of the way, and it groaned on rusty hinges. Inside, the booth smelled stale, a mix of dust, old metal, and something indefinably melancholic. The phone receiver hung by a spiraled cord, its plastic casing yellowed and cracked. The keypad was grimy, many of the numbers worn smooth. Jessica reached out, her fingers trembling, and touched the cold, grimy surface of the phone. She imagined Emily's hand on it, her ear pressed to the receiver, her eyes scanning this very landscape for whatever terror pursued her. She scanned the interior of the booth, looking for anything, any sign. There was a faded sticker for a long-defunct pizza place, a few scratched initials carved into the metal frame. Nothing. The police would have checked this, surely? But no, the police didn't know which phone booth. They wouldn't have known to look here. Jessica knelt, examining the floor. It was covered in a thin layer of dust and dried leaves. She ran her hand along the narrow shelf beneath the phone, feeling for anything out of place. Her fingers brushed against something small, solid, and cold. She picked it up. It was a locket. Small, tarnished silver, shaped like a heart, but with an intricate, almost alien symbol etched into its surface. It was old, clearly not something Emily would have worn. It felt heavy in her palm, cold and mysterious. Its clasp was broken, and it lay open, revealing two empty, discolored spaces where photographs might once have been. Jessica stared at it, her mind racing. This wasn't Emily's. She knew Emily's jewelry. So whose was it? And why was it here, hidden in the dust and decay of this forgotten phone booth? A chill, colder than the metal locket in her hand, snaked its way down her spine. This wasn't just about Emily anymore. This was about something much, much darker. The locket felt impossibly cold in David's hand, a tiny metallic heart chilling his skin despite the late afternoon warmth. It wasn't just cold. It was heavy with implications, a lead weight dragging him deeper into a current he hadn't anticipated. This wasn't the simple, heartbreaking case of a runaway or a tragic accident he'd initially braced himself for. This locket, tucked away in the forgotten corner of a derelict phone booth, screamed of intent, of a deliberate act, and a far more sinister narrative. He stared at the tarnished silver, his thumb tracing the faint, intricate etching of a vine pattern on its surface. The metal felt old, worn, yet deliberately placed, almost like a morbid offering. He flipped it open, the tiny hinge groaning softly, a sound that seemed amplified in the oppressive silence of the roadside. Inside, nestled beneath a cloudy, scratched plastic film, was a miniature photograph. It was Emily. Her smile, though faded by time and the elements, was unmistakable, a small bright beacon in the dim light of the booth. But she wasn't alone. Next to her, a figure, a man, was almost entirely obscured, his image blurred, as if intentionally scratched out, leaving only a vague, shadowy outline. David squinted, trying to discern features, a shirt color, anything, but it was just a smudge, a ghost next to Emily's clear, vibrant face. On the back of the locket, etched in a delicate, almost cursive script, were 3 words: "Forever our secret here." The words hit David like a physical blow. Here. Not just a secret, but their secret here. In this very phone booth. The implications were immediate, chilling. This wasn't just her locket. It was a testament, a specific marker. Emily had been here, and she had been here with someone. Someone who shared a secret so profound it was immortalized on a piece of jewelry, and linked irrevocably to this desolate spot. The hairs on David's arms rose. This wasn't a random drop. This was a statement, or worse, a warning. He carefully placed the locket into a small, clear evidence bag he always carried, his movements precise, practiced. His mind, however, was a whirlwind. He photographed the locket in situ before touching it, then again in the bag, capturing its every angle, every detail. He documented the phone booth's interior with meticulous care. The dust, the cobwebs, the faint, lingering smell of stale metal and forgotten lives. Every inch of the grimy glass, every crack in the plastic receiver, every loose screw was scrutinized. He was no longer just searching for Emily. He was searching for a perpetrator, for answers to a question that had just grown terrifyingly complex. The sun was beginning its slow descent, painting the western sky in hues of orange and purple, casting long skeletal shadows across the deserted highway. The isolation, which had initially felt peaceful, now felt predatory. The phone booth, a monument to a bygone era, seemed to hum with silent stories, each one darker than the last. David had always trusted his gut, and right now his gut was screaming. He wasn't alone out here, or at least he felt as though he wasn't. A prickling sensation on the back of his neck, a subtle shift in the air, or perhaps just his heightened senses playing tricks, made him glance over his shoulder. Nothing. Just the endless stretch of road, the whispering dry grass, and the distant, unseen hum of the world moving on, oblivious to the silent drama unfolding here. He pulled out his satellite phone, its bright, modern screen a stark contrast to the decaying relic around him. He considered calling the local sheriff, a small-town officer named Jenkins he'd met once briefly. But no, this was too delicate, too personal. Jenkins would see a missing girl, a found locket. David saw something far more intricate, a puzzle with deadly pieces. He needed someone who understood the nuances, the unspoken language of crime, the subtle shift from missing person to something far more sinister. He dialed a number he hadn't called in years, a number ingrained in his memory from his days on the force, a lifeline to a different kind of justice. Miller, a gruff voice answered on the third ring. Detective Richard Miller, David's former mentor, a man whose cynicism was only outmatched by his unwavering moral compass. Rich, it's David. I need your eyes on something. Unofficially, David kept his voice low, almost a whisper, despite the vast emptiness surrounding him. He quickly recounted the details of Emily's disappearance, the drive, the phone booth, and the locket, omitting nothing. There was a long silence on Miller's end, punctuated only by the faint crackle of the satellite connection. Then Miller's voice, devoid of its usual sarcasm, came through, grave and sober. A locket, with a scratched-out face. Forever our secret here. David, that's not just a clue. That's a signature. A message. This isn't just about finding Emily anymore, is it? No, Rich. It's not. I've got a bad feeling. A really bad feeling. David's gaze swept the interior of the booth once more. A primal instinct urging him to find more, to uncover the next piece before darkness fully descended. His flashlight beam danced across the grimy surfaces, illuminating forgotten dust motes, the faded graffiti of past lovers, the faint impressions of hands that had once gripped the receiver, pouring out their hopes and fears. As his light traced the edge of the coin slot, an almost imperceptible glint caught his eye. Something small, tucked deep into a narrow crevice where the metal casing met the plastic frame. It wasn't immediately visible. It required an intentional search, a deliberate probe. Using the tip of a pen, David carefully dislodged it. It was a tiny, intricately folded piece of paper, no larger than his thumbnail. It wasn't crumpled or accidentally dropped. It was folded with purpose, almost hermetically sealed into its hiding spot. His heart hammered against his ribs. This wasn't just trash. This was another secret. Another message. With trembling fingers, David unfolded the minuscule paper, his breath held captive in his lungs. The paper was old, brittle, and on it, scrawled in what looked like hurried yet deliberate blue ink, was a single word. A word that made the blood drain from David's face. A word that solidified the dread, turning it into a cold, hard certainty. A word that changed everything. The word was witness. The word was witness. David stared at the single, stark word, feeling as if the air had been sucked from his lungs. The chill of the night suddenly intensified, wrapping around him like a suffocating shroud. Witness. The meaning hit him with the force of a physical blow, stripping away any lingering doubt that this was all some elaborate, twisted prank. This was real. This was terrifying. His blood ran cold, a glacial current seeping through his veins, leaving him lightheaded and nauseous. He could feel the frantic thrum of his pulse echoing in his ears, louder than the distant hum of the highway. His gaze darted frantically around the cramped, grimy confines of the phone booth, then out into the impenetrable darkness beyond. Who had left this? How did they know he was here? How did they know he was involved? The questions hammered at his skull, each one a fresh spike of dread. He instinctively crumpled the small piece of paper in his fist, the rough texture of it digging into his palm. It felt like a confession, a death warrant, a secret he was now bound to. His eyes, wide and unblinking, scanned the empty road, the silent trees, the desolate expanse of fields. Every shadow seemed to coalesce. Every rustle of leaves in the wind sounded like approaching footsteps. He was utterly alone, yet the word witness screamed that he was being watched, that he was no longer invisible. The desperate calls from the unknown woman, her voice laced with raw terror, replayed in his mind. "They're coming for me. Don't tell anyone. You're the only one." At the time, they were just fragmented pleas from a stranger. Now they coalesced into a chilling narrative. The woman was a witness to something so dangerous, so profound that they were coming for her. And now, by some cosmic, horrifying twist of fate, David had been drawn into her orbit. He had answered her calls. He had called her back. He had come to this phone booth. And now he had found this note. The implication was clear, brutally so. If she was a witness and they were after her, then calling him, trusting him, had made him a connection. And connections in this dark world were targets. The word witness wasn't just a statement. It was a branding. He was marked. A wave of fear, cold and visceral, washed over him, making his knees weak. His mundane life, his predictable routine had been shattered. He was no longer just David, the quiet accountant who enjoyed his evening walks. He was now, inexplicably, part of something sinister, something that could unravel his entire existence. The thought of simply walking away, of getting back in his car and driving home to pretend this never happened, flashed through his mind. But the note, burning a hole in his pocket, made that impossible. He couldn't unsee it, couldn't unknow it. He was in too deep. Or rather, he had been pulled too deep without even realizing it. He took a shaky breath, trying to force some semblance of calm into his racing mind. Panic wouldn't help. He needed to think. He needed to understand. What was he a witness to? Had he unknowingly seen something, heard something? He racked his brain, searching for any anomaly, any strange occurrence in the past few days or weeks that could possibly connect him to this. Nothing. His life had been painstakingly ordinary. Unless he was a witness to something he hadn't yet realized. Something that was still unfolding. He pulled the crumpled note back out, smoothing it against the metal shelf beneath the phone. The blue ink was stark against the faded white paper. He looked closely at the handwriting again, hurried, yet deliberate. It wasn't a child's scrawl, nor was it a perfect, practiced hand. It was an adult's writing, perhaps someone under duress, but determined to convey a message. The paper itself felt like standard printer paper, nothing distinctive. He felt a prickling sensation on the back of his neck, the unnerving feeling of eyes on him. He spun around, peering through the grimy glass of the booth, but saw nothing but the vast, empty night. The crickets chirped, the wind whispered, and the silence of the countryside pressed in on him. It was a silence that felt heavy, pregnant with unspoken threats. He had to do something. Going to the police felt futile. What would he say? "Officer, I've been getting weird calls from an unknown number, and now I found a note in a phone booth that says witness?" They'd probably tell him to lay off the late-night coffee. He had no evidence, no concrete crime, just an escalating sense of terror. No, he was on his own. His gaze fell back on the phone itself, the heavy black receiver, the worn buttons. He had just called the unknown number back. It had rung once before going to voicemail. Had someone been watching, waiting for him to make that call? Had the note been placed after he made his initial call? A direct response to his attempt to re-establish contact? That seemed the most plausible and most terrifying explanation. Someone knew he was trying to connect. Someone knew he was here. He reached out, his fingers tracing the cold, slightly sticky surface of the receiver. He remembered the caller's voice, the sheer desperation. Don't tell anyone. She had trusted him, and now he was tangled in her web. He couldn't just abandon her, even if he didn't know who she was or what she was running from. Not with this word, witness, staring him in the face. He needed more. More information, more clues. The phone booth itself, this relic of a bygone era, had been the nexus. Could it hold another secret? He ran his hand along the metal casing of the phone, his fingers exploring every crack, every crevice, every faded sticker. He even checked beneath the small sticky note-sized ad for a local pizza place that had long since gone out of business. Nothing. Then, his thumb brushed against something barely perceptible on the smooth, hard plastic of the dial pad housing, just above the 5 button. It wasn't a scratch from general wear and tear. It was too deliberate, too distinct, yet so faint he could have easily missed it 100 times. He leaned in closer, squinting in the dim, flickering light cast by the booth's single weak bulb. It was a symbol. A small, almost imperceptible etching, no bigger than his thumbnail. It wasn't a letter from the alphabet, nor a number. It was a stylized, almost triangular shape, with a horizontal line cutting across its base, and another, smaller line emerging vertically from the center of that horizontal line, extending upwards to meet the apex of the triangle. It looked vaguely like a Greek letter, or perhaps a simplified diagram. It was certainly not random. It was deliberate, and it was deeply, profoundly unsettling. David stared at the crude drawing, his heart hammering against his ribs. The lines were simple, yet they screamed intent. This wasn't a random doodle. This wasn't a child's scribble. This was a message. But from whom? And what did it mean? His mind raced, replaying the entire bizarre call. The distorted voice, the static, the frantic tone, and then this, etched onto the condensation of a forgotten phone booth window. He felt a cold dread seep into his bones, a feeling far more potent than the night air. It was the chilling realization that someone somewhere knew he was here, knew he was listening, knew he would see this. The thought of being watched, of being chosen for this cryptic communication, made his skin crawl. Was it a threat? A warning? A puzzle? He pulled out his phone, the screen illuminating the dark interior of the booth. He needed to take a picture. This wasn't something he could just describe. He needed proof. His fingers fumbled, the cold making them less dexterous than usual, but he managed to snap a quick photo, the flash briefly highlighting the condensation and the stark, unsettling symbol. As he looked at the image on his phone, the reality solidified. This wasn't a figment of his imagination. It was real, tangible, and it was connected to that call. He had to show someone. Someone who wouldn't immediately dismiss him as crazy. Someone who was good at puzzles. Emily. Emily Carter lived a few towns over, a 20-minute drive on a good night. She was practical, sharp, and had an uncanny ability to see patterns where others saw chaos. She was the one he'd call when his computer crashed, when he couldn't figure out a complex instruction manual, or, apparently, when a mysterious stranger drew cryptic symbols on a phone booth window after a chilling phone call. The drive felt endless. Each shadow seemed to lengthen. Each distant headlight in his rearview mirror seemed to follow him a little too closely. His mind was a maelstrom of theories. Was it a gang symbol? A cult? Some kind of elaborate prank by someone with too much time and an unhealthy obsession with him? But why him? He was just David Miller, an ordinary guy working an ordinary job. He wasn't involved in anything remotely dramatic or mysterious. Or so he thought. He kept glancing at his phone. The image of the symbol burned into his retina. A triangle with a line bisecting its base, extending to the apex. It looked almost like an A without the crossbar. Or perhaps the Greek letter delta. But what significance could that hold? He wasn't a classical scholar, nor did he delve into secret societies or ancient symbols. This was entirely outside his realm of understanding. He finally pulled into Emily's driveway, the familiar porch light a welcome beacon in the oppressive darkness. He killed the engine but didn't immediately get out. He took a deep, shaky breath, trying to compose himself. He needed to present this calmly, rationally, even though every fiber of his being was screaming in panic. He walked up to her door and knocked, the sound echoing a little too loudly in the quiet night. A moment later, the porch light clicked on brighter, and Emily's face appeared in the window, her brow furrowed in concern. She opened the door, a warm, slightly anxious smile on her face. "David, what are you doing here so late? Is everything okay?" she asked, her voice soft but edged with worry. She took in his disheveled appearance, the slight tremor in his hands, the wide, haunted look in his eyes. "No, Emily. Nothing's okay," he managed, his voice a little hoarse. I think I need your help. I think something really strange is happening." She ushered him inside, her concern deepening. Come in, come in. You look like you've seen a ghost. What happened?" He walked past her into her living room, a cozy space filled with books and plants, a stark contrast to the unsettling mystery he carried. He turned to face her, his phone clutched in his hand. "I got a call, Emily. From a payphone. The old one out on Route 17, near the abandoned diner." Emily's eyes widened slightly. "The one that hasn't worked in years? David, are you sure?" "That's what I thought too. But it rang. And I answered it." And the voice, it was distorted, like through a bad connection or maybe deliberately altered. But it was desperate. It kept saying they're watching. "Don't trust the others. Find the sign." He paused, trying to recall the exact phrasing, the urgency in the voice. And then it cut out. But before it did, the person on the other end, they drew something on the inside of the phone booth window. In the condensation. He held out his phone, displaying the image. Emily took it, her expression shifting from concern to utter bewilderment, then to a flicker of genuine unease. She zoomed in on the image, her finger tracing the lines on the screen. What is this, David?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I don't know," he admitted, rubbing a hand over his face. "It's a triangle, right? With a line from the middle of the base going up to the top point. It's so specific, so deliberate." Emily sat down on her couch, still staring at the phone. "It looks like a stylized or maybe the Greek letter delta, as you said. But why would someone draw this? And why call you? Why that phone booth? That's what I need you to help me figure out, Emily. Feels important and terrifying. The way they said, 'Don't trust the others.' It felt like a warning." She handed him back his phone, her gaze distant, already turning over possibilities in her mind. "Okay, let's break this down. First, the phone booth. Supposed to be dead. How did it ring? And who knew you'd be there to answer it?" "I don't know," David reiterated, frustration creeping into his voice. "I was just driving back from late shift, saw it, and on a whim decided to see if it was still standing. I don't usually even drive that route." Emily's brow furrowed. "That's a big coincidence, David. Too big, maybe. What if they knew you'd be there? Or at least knew you might be there and took a chance?" The blood drained from David's face. You think I was targeted? It's a possibility we can't ignore," she said, her voice steady, despite the gravity of her words. "Now the message. They're watching. Don't trust the others. Find the sign. The sign could be this symbol. Or it could be something else they want you to find, and this symbol is a clue to that sign." She stood up and walked over to her bookshelf, pulling out a thick, dusty tome on symbology. She flipped through the pages, her eyes scanning the intricate illustrations in dense text. "Let's see, triangle with a line from the base to the apex." In ancient cultures, triangles often represented mountains, stability, or even divinity. The upward point can symbolize aspiration, masculinity, or fire. In alchemy, an upward triangle represents fire, while a downward one represents water. "So fire?" David asked, trying to grasp at any straw. "Possibly, but the line adds specificity. It's not just a triangle, it's a modified one. If it's in a without the crossbar, well, is the first letter of the alphabet. Alpha, beginning, or maybe it's an acronym, or the initial of a name." She paused, then continued. "The Greek letter delta, is often used in mathematics and science to denote change or difference. It's also the fourth letter of the Greek alphabet. Does change mean anything to you? Or difference?" David shook his head. "Nothing. My life is pretty static, Emily. No big changes, no unusual differences." "What about the phrase 'don't trust the others'?" she pressed. "Who are the others? People you know? People at your work? Or just people in general?" "I have no idea," he admitted, feeling the weight of the unknown pressing down on him. "It makes me feel like everyone around me is suspect. My coworkers, my neighbors." "Don't let it paralyze you," Emily warned, sensing his spiraling anxiety. "It's a tactic, a way to isolate you. We need to be rational. Let's think about the context. A dead phone booth, a distorted voice, a cryptic symbol. This isn't random. This is designed to confuse, to scare, to instigate." She closed the symbology book, a thoughtful expression on her face. "Let's try a different angle. What if it's not a symbol in the traditional sense? What if it's a map? Or a diagram?" David looked at the image again. "A map? How?" "Well, think about it. A triangle often indicates a location, like a mountain peak on a map. And that line, maybe it's pointing somewhere, a specific direction. North, perhaps, if the base is oriented horizontally. But oriented to what? David mused. The phone booth? The road? Exactly, Emily said, her excitement growing slightly. If the base of the triangle was parallel to Route 17, and the line pointed directly away from the road, perpendicular to it, what would be in that direction? David tried to visualize it. The phone booth was set back a little from the road, next to the abandoned diner. If the base was the road and the line pointed inland, there's nothing there, he said, shaking his head. Just woods. Dense woods. And then, eventually, the old quarry, but that's miles away. And then more woods. But what if the base isn't the road? Emily countered. What if the base is something else? Or what if the symbol itself is a stylized representation of a landmark? Like a specific peak, or a roofline, or even a specific very old, very unique grave marker in some forgotten cemetery. The idea sent a fresh shiver down David's spine. A grave marker. The thought was morbid, but it fit the unsettling vibe of the entire situation. And what about the watching part? David asked, trying to bring them back to the immediate threat. They're watching. Who are they? Emily walked over to her window, pulling back the curtain slightly. She peered out into the darkness, her gaze sweeping across her quiet street. It implies multiple people. An organization, maybe. Or a group. And if they're watching, they could be watching you right now, David. Or they were watching you at the phone booth. The implication hung heavy in the air. David felt a familiar prickle of paranoia at the back of his neck. He instinctively glanced towards the window, then around the room, as if expecting to see a pair of eyes staring back from the shadows. We need to be careful, Emily stated, letting the curtain fall back into place. This isn't a game. Someone went to a lot of trouble to set this up, to get that phone working, to make that call, to draw that symbol. And they chose you. She turned to face him, her expression serious. This isn't just about figuring out a puzzle, David. This is about understanding why you've been drawn into it, and what they want you to do, or what they want to prevent you from doing. But what if it's just a sick joke? David asked, clinging to the slim hope that this was all an elaborate, cruel prank. Emily shook her head slowly. A prank usually has a punchline, David. Some kind of reveal. This doesn't feel like that. This feels like the beginning of something much larger. Something much darker. She walked back to her couch, picking up her laptop. Okay, let's start with the basics. The symbol. We need to exhaust every possible interpretation. And then we need to think about that phone booth. Who would have the technical know-how to reactivate it? And why that specific one? She opened her laptop, her fingers already flying across the keyboard. And while I'm looking into that, you need to think, David. Hard. Is there anything at all that connects you to this symbol? To a triangle? To the letter A or delta? To fire? To a specific location near the abandoned diner or the quarry? Any old family stories? Any strange encounters? Anything you've forgotten? Or dismissed as unimportant? He sat there, the silence of the room punctuated only by the soft click of Emily's keyboard. The symbol on his phone seemed to pulse with an ominous energy. He closed his eyes, trying to dredge up any memory, any detail, no matter how insignificant. The weight of the mystery of being unknowingly targeted was crushing, and the chilling words echoed in his mind. Asterisk, they're watching. Don't trust the others. Asterisk. He had to find the sign. Before they found him. His heart hammered against his ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the silence of the motel room. Asterisk, they're watching. Don't trust the others. Asterisk, the words, delivered with such chilling certainty, had burrowed deep into Michael's mind, taking root and blossoming into a suffocating paranoia. He had to find the sign. Before they found him. But what sign? And where? His gaze swept around the sterile room, as if the answer might be etched into the peeling wallpaper or hidden beneath the worn carpet. Nothing. Just the oppressive quiet and the growing knot of dread in his stomach. He wasn't just a target. He was a blindfolded target, stumbling through a maze designed by an unseen enemy. He needed an anchor, a starting point. The phone call. The last call. It had come from that phone booth. It was the only tangible link he had to this nightmare. With a renewed sense of desperate urgency, Michael grabbed his keys. He couldn't stay here, paralyzed by fear. Any action was better than waiting to be found. The drive back to the phone booth was a blur of hyper-awareness. Every car that passed, Every set of headlights in his rearview mirror felt like a potential threat. He gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles ached, his eyes darting from side to side, scanning the darkened streets of the unfamiliar town. The warning echoed, asterisk, don't trust the others. Asterisk, it meant he was utterly alone. He couldn't flag down a police officer, couldn't confide in a motel clerk, couldn't even ask for directions without suspicion tainting his every interaction. The world had shrunk to Michael and his unseen pursuers. He pulled his car into the dimly lit parking lot of the old diner, the same lot where the phone booth stood like a forgotten sentinel. The diner sign, with its flickering neon, cast an anemic glow on the cracked asphalt. Michael killed the engine, plunging his immediate surroundings into near darkness, save for the distant streetlights. He watched, waited. No sudden movements, no figures emerging from the shadows, just the hum of the night and the distant murmur of traffic. Taking a deep, shaky breath, he pushed open his car door, the small creak sounding deafening in the stillness. He walked towards the phone booth, his footsteps unnaturally loud to his own ears. It looked no different than it had hours ago, a relic of a bygone era, its glass panels smudged, its metal frame showing signs of rust. He circled it slowly, his eyes meticulously scanning every surface. He ran his fingers over the grimy glass, then along the cold, scratched metal of the phone itself. Nothing. No hidden notes, no obvious markings, no flashing lights. Just the rotary dial, the coin slot, and the tattered phone book hanging by a chain. He flipped through the decaying pages of the phone book, the paper brittle and yellowed. Only numbers, names, and advertisements for local businesses. Not a sign in sight. Michael felt a wave of despair wash over him. He was grasping at straws, chasing a phantom clue. He leaned against the booth's frame, his head bowed, trying to clear the frantic noise in his mind. Asterisk, think, Michael, think. What would be a sign? Something subtle, something easily missed. Asterisk. He straightened up, forcing himself to look beyond the obvious. He got down on his knees, peering at the base of the booth where it met the concrete slab. Dirt, pebbles, a discarded cigarette butt. Then, almost imperceptible in the gloom, hidden beneath a thin layer of grime, he saw it. Etched crudely into the weathered metal near the bottom left corner of the booth's frame was a symbol. It wasn't a letter, nor a number. It was a simple yet striking glyph. A triangle with a small, perfectly circular in its center. It was barely a centimeter across, almost invisible unless you knew to look for it, or were scrutinizing the surface with the desperation Michael possessed. His heart gave a jolt. This had to be it. The sign. But what did it mean? He traced the edges of the symbol with his fingertip, a cold shiver running down his spine. It felt ancient, deliberate. It contained no obvious message, no instructions. It was just there. A silent, cryptic marker. As he stood up, brushing the dirt from his pants, the beam of an approaching car's headlights swept across the parking lot. Michael instinctively ducked behind the phone booth, his breath catching in his throat. The car, an older model sedan, slowed as it passed the diner, its occupants indistinguishable in the glare. It didn't stop, didn't seem to notice him, but the moment had been enough. The feeling of being watched, of being hunted, was not just paranoia. It was real. He had to get out of the open. The diner. It was still open, a few lights on, a couple of cars in the lot. It offered a semblance of safety, a place to think. He walked quickly but casually, pushing open the diner door. The bell above chimed, a cheerful sound that felt utterly out of place. Inside, the diner was quiet. A lone waitress, a woman with tired eyes and hair pulled back in a loose bun, was wiping down the counter. Two truckers sat in a booth near the back, their voices a low murmur. Michael slid into a booth by the window, offering him a view of the phone booth outside, and more importantly, the parking lot. "Just coffee, please," he told the waitress, Brenda, according to her name tag. She nodded, her expression weary, and moved to the coffee machine. Michael pulled out his phone, not to use it but to pretend he was occupied. He glanced at the symbol again, trying to commit it to memory. A triangle with a dot. What was its significance? Was it a gang symbol? A cult? A corporate logo? Nothing came to mind. He let his eyes drift across the diner. Faded red vinyl booths, a checkered floor, an old jukebox in the corner. His gaze snagged on a collection of framed photographs hanging on the far wall. Old sepia-toned pictures of the town, dating back decades. Local landmarks, community events, grainy portraits of town founders. He needed to get a closer look. Taking a sip of his coffee, Michael slowly rose and walked towards the wall, feigning interest in the historical display. He moved from picture to picture, his heart thumping with a mixture of hope and trepidation. Most were ordinary, depicting a simpler time. A parade down Main Street, the old clock tower, the town's founding family. Then he saw it. A photograph, yellowed with age, showing a panoramic view of the town from a hill. In the foreground, children played in a dusty street. In the middle ground, familiar buildings. But it was the background that seized his attention. Dominating the distant skyline was an old, dilapidated water tower. Its metal structure rusted and scarred, and painted crudely on its side, almost faded to oblivion, was the unmistakable symbol, the triangle with the dot in the center. Michael felt a surge of adrenaline, cold and sharp. This was it. This was the next piece. The sign wasn't just a symbol. It was a destination. The water tower. It was old, probably abandoned, a perfect place for secrets. He pulled out his phone discreetly, snapping a quick, blurry photo of the old picture, focusing on the water tower. He didn't want to linger, didn't want to draw attention. He felt a prickling sensation on the back of his neck, the familiar phantom touch of unseen eyes. He glanced quickly around the diner. The two truckers were still engrossed in their conversation. Brenda was refilling another customer's coffee. No one seemed to be watching him, but the feeling persisted. He walked back to his booth, forcing himself to appear calm, to take another slow sip of coffee. He pulled out a few dollars for the check, leaving it on the table. He had to go. Now, before the lingering feeling of being observed turned into a concrete threat. He had found the sign, and it was leading him deeper into the unknown, into the heart of whatever dark secret this town held. The chilling words returned. Asterisk, they're watching. Asterisk, and now, he was actively seeking what they were watching over. The hunter had become the hunted, but at least now, he had a direction. He had to find that water tower, and he had to do it before they realized he knew where to look. The map in his hand, a crude but precise sketch, felt like a burning coal. Michael didn't waste another second. He shoved it into his pocket, his mind a whirlwind of possibilities and dangers. The water tower. Not just a landmark but a nexus, the center of their web. He had to get there, and he had to do it before the realization dawned on them that their little secret wasn't so secret anymore. He tore out of the gas station parking lot, not heading back towards town, but veering onto a less traveled county road. Every instinct screamed at him. He was exposed. He was driving a recognizable vehicle. They knew him. They knew his car. He had to be smarter, faster, and more invisible than he'd ever been. He drove for a few miles, his eyes constantly flicking to the rearview mirror. Nothing. But that didn't mean they weren't there. Just meant they were good. He made a sudden sharp turn onto a dirt track, kicking up a plume of dust that would hopefully obscure his immediate direction. He killed his headlights, plunging the road into darkness, relying on the faint moonlight filtering through the trees. He pulled over under the thick canopy of a copse of oaks, cutting the engine. The sudden silence was deafening, punctuated only by the chirping of crickets and the frantic pounding of his own heart. He pulled out his phone, debating. Was it a tracker? A listening device? He couldn't risk it. With a grimace he powered it off, the screen going black like an eye closing. He was truly alone now, disconnected from the world, and every safety net he thought he had. He consulted the map again, pulling it out in the dim glow of his dashboard light. The water tower wasn't far, maybe 3 miles as the crow flies, but the roads were winding and unpaved. He couldn't drive directly to it without being seen. He decided on an indirect approach, parking his car as hidden as possible and continuing on foot. It was risky, slow, and exposed him to the elements, but it was the only way he could think of to maintain an element of surprise. He grabbed the small, heavy-duty flashlight he kept in his glove compartment, checked the charge, and slipped out of the car. The night air was cool, carrying the scent of damp earth and distant pine. He moved quickly, silently, through the undergrowth, using the map as his guide. The terrain was rough, uneven. Twigs snapped under his worn sneakers, leaves rustled, and every shadow seemed to conceal a hidden watcher. He imagined eyes on him, lenses zooming in, microphones picking up his ragged breathing. The thought spurred him on, pushing him faster, deeper into the darkness. After what felt like an eternity but was probably only 45 minutes, he saw it. A dark, imposing silhouette against the star-dusted sky. The water tower. It was old, a rusted behemoth of steel and rivets, towering over the surrounding trees like a skeletal sentinel. It looked abandoned, forgotten, yet he knew with a chilling certainty that it was anything but. He approached cautiously, keeping to the tree line, using every bush and shadow for cover. The ground around the tower was cleared, a wide, gravelly expanse that offered no concealment. This was their perimeter. He scanned the base of the tower. No obvious fences, no glaring floodlights. Too subtle for that. Their surveillance would be hidden, sophisticated. As he got closer, he noticed something. Not cameras, not at first, but a faint hum, a low thrumming sound that vibrated through the ground. It was almost imperceptible over the night sounds, but it was there, a steady pulse of unseen machinery. He dropped to a crouch, his heart hammering against his ribs. This wasn't just a water tower, it was an active site. He crept towards the base of the tower, his flashlight off, relying on his night vision. The hum grew louder, more distinct. It wasn't coming from the tower itself, but from a small, squat building tucked away behind a cluster of overgrown bushes at the base. It was barely visible, constructed of cinder blocks, painted a dull, camouflage green that blended almost perfectly with the surrounding foliage. This was it, the nerve center. His breath hitched in his throat. He was here. He had found it. But what now? He couldn't just walk in. He circled the small building, his senses on high alert. No windows. A single heavy steel door, devoid of any visible handle or lock, flush with the wall. It looked impenetrable. A single, thin conduit, no thicker than his thumb, snaked out from the back of the building and disappeared underground, presumably heading towards the water tower itself, or perhaps a power source. He pressed his ear against the cold steel of the door. He could hear it now distinctly. The hum of electronics, the whirring of fans, and of voices. Faint, muffled, but undeniably human. They were inside. Right now. A cold dread seeped into him. He wasn't just looking for clues anymore. He was on the verge of stumbling into a live operation. Jessica. Was she in there? Was this where they held her? The thought ignited a fresh surge of adrenaline, pushing aside his fear. He had to find a way in. He moved around the building, searching for any weakness, any crack. The cinder blocks were old, some crumbling slightly, but the construction was solid. He noticed a small, almost invisible vent near the roofline, barely big enough for a small animal, certainly not for a man. It was pushing out a faint current of warm, stale air. As he rounded the backside of the building, near where the conduit went underground, he saw it. A small square panel about a foot by a foot, set into the concrete foundation. It was almost perfectly flush, covered in dirt and grime, but a faint outline suggested it was removable. He knelt, his fingers tracing the edges. It wasn't a door, more like an access hatch. He fumbled for his multi-tool, his hands trembling slightly. He found a thin, sturdy blade and began to carefully pry at the edge of the panel. It was stiff, rusted in place. He applied more pressure, gritting his teeth. A faint click. The panel shifted, revealing a narrow gap. He peered inside, using the faint light from his flashlight, angled low to avoid any outward glow. It was a tight crawl space, leading under the building. He could see a network of wires, pipes, and what looked like the underside of a raised floor. This was a utility access. Not the main entrance, but it might lead him to a way in, or at least closer to the source of the voices. He hesitated for a moment, weighing the risk. Going into that confined space was a commitment. There would be no easy escape. But Jessica, the thought of her trapped, spurred him forward. He had come too far to turn back. He slid the panel completely open, revealing a dark, earthy tunnel. He took a deep breath, steeling himself, and began to squeeze through the narrow opening feet first. The air inside was cool and damp, smelling of earth and something metallic. He wriggled forward, pushing himself with his elbows, the rough concrete scraping against his clothes. It was claustrophobic, suffocating. He fought down a rising panic. He advanced slowly, the hum of the electronics growing louder, closer. He could hear the muffled voices more clearly now, though he still couldn't make out words. They sounded calm, professional, almost dispassionate. Not the voices of captors torturing someone, but of people working. After what felt like an agonizing eternity, The tunnel opened up into a slightly larger space. He carefully pushed himself upright, his head brushing against a low ceiling of wires and pipes. He was directly beneath the building. Above him he could clearly hear the footsteps, the clatter of keyboards, and now distinct voices. Two men by the sound of it. He moved silently, crouching low, towards a section of the ceiling where the sounds were loudest. He saw it. A grate partially obscured by more wiring. It was a floor vent, leading directly into the room above. He could see faint light filtering through it. He pressed his ear against the grate, straining to hear. "Perimeter secure, no anomalies detected," one voice said, calm and measured. "Good," replied the second, deeper voice. "Keep eyes on Sector Gamma. Our friend Michael is getting restless. He's made some unexpected moves." Michael froze. They knew. They knew he was restless. They knew he was making moves. And they were still watching. The hunter had indeed become the hunted, but it seemed they were always one step ahead. "Any word on the package?" the first voice asked. "Not yet," the second replied. "But the delivery is imminent. We need to be ready to transition to Phase 2 once she's secured." "The package?" Michael's blood ran cold. Jessica. They were waiting for her. She wasn't here yet, but she was coming, and they were planning something. Phase 2. He heard a chair scrape, and the footsteps grew louder, closer to the vent. He ducked back, pressing himself against the damp, cold wall, his heart pounding a frantic rhythm against his chest. He could feel the vibrations of the footsteps directly above him. Then a sudden sharp thump from the room above, followed by a grunt. The footsteps stopped. "What was that?" the first voice asked, a hint of alarm in his tone. "Just a pipe settling," the second voice grumbled. "Or perhaps a rat. Relax, Miller. We're secure." Michael held his breath, every muscle tense. He could feel the weight of their presence just inches above his head. He was trapped directly beneath their operation, and they were talking about Jessica, about him, about their next move. He was in the heart of their lair, and he had just learned that Jessica was not yet here, but was about to be delivered. He had to act. He had to find a way out, and a way to stop Phase 2. But before he could even form a plan, he heard something else. A faint metallic clink from directly above the vent. It was followed by a soft, almost inaudible hiss. And then a strange, sweet, cloying smell began to filter through the grate, seeping into the confined space beneath the building. Michael's eyes widened, a primal alarm screaming in his mind. He recognized that smell. It was an anesthetic. They were gassing the room. Or were they gassing him? He recognized that smell. It was an anesthetic. They were gassing the room. Or were they gassing him? A jolt of pure terror surged through Michael. He scrambled backward, pressing his spine against the cold concrete wall, his eyes darting frantically around the cramped space. The grate above him, the source of the insidious vapor, seemed to mock him, its metal teeth grinning in the gloom. He instinctively pulled his shirt up, pressing it against his nose and mouth, a futile attempt to filter the increasingly potent fumes. His breath hitched, a desperate shallow gasp for clean air that wasn't there. The scent intensified, a cloying sweetness that was quickly turning acrid, burning the back of his throat. His head began to spin, a dizzying spiral that pulled at his senses. He tried to think, to rationalize, to find an escape. But his thoughts were already becoming sluggish, thick as molasses. Asterisk who? Why? Asterisk, the questions echoed in his mind, losing their urgency as a strange, heavy tranquility began to settle over him. His limbs felt like lead, his muscles refusing to obey. He tried to push himself up, to crawl towards the small, distant opening from which he'd entered, but his body rebelled. A wave of nausea washed over him, followed by a profound sense of detachment. The world around him seemed to blur, the harsh outlines of the concrete walls softening, dissolving into a hazy, indistinct form. The air, once sharp with the chemical tang, now felt warm and embracing, lulling him into a false sense of security. He fought it, a primal scream trapped in his chest, a desperate urge to resist this encroaching oblivion. He thrashed weakly, his hands scraping against the rough concrete, leaving faint trails of skin. He could feel his eyelids growing heavy, an irresistible weight pulling them down. He squeezed them shut, trying to hold on to consciousness, to the last vestiges of reality. Images flickered through his mind, the phone booth, its cracked glass gleaming in the moonlight. Jessica's worried face, etched with a fear he hadn't fully understood. The old man's cryptic warnings. They spun, distorted, fading into the encroaching darkness. His breathing grew shallow, ragged, then smoothed into a slow, rhythmic hum that was no longer his own. The last thing Michael registered was the sound of his own heart, a fading drumbeat, slowly losing its tempo, before the world dissolved into an absolute silent void. Asterisk. A dull ache throbbed behind Michael's eyes, a persistent rhythmic pulse that seemed to reverberate through his entire skull. He groaned, a low guttural sound that scratched his dry throat. His tongue felt thick, his mouth like sandpaper. He tried to open his eyes, but they felt glued shut, heavy and reluctant. A faint sterile smell permeated the air, something clinical like antiseptic, mixed with a faint metallic tang. It was utterly alien to the damp, earthy scent of the crawl space. He forced his eyelids open, slowly, painfully. The world was a blurry kaleidoscope of muted colors, slowly sharpening into focus. He was lying on a narrow, uncomfortable bed, a thin, scratchy blanket pulled up to his chest. The mattress beneath him was firm, unyielding. He blinked several times, trying to clear the lingering fog from his mind. The room was small, stark, and disturbingly impersonal. The walls were a uniform, pale gray, bare save for a single small recessed vent near the ceiling. There was no window. A single dim light fixture, encased in a protective metal cage, cast a weak, yellowish glow from the ceiling. In the corner, a small stainless steel sink with a faucet glinted dully. Opposite the bed, a heavy metal door, painted the same dull gray as the walls, stood firmly shut, without a handle on his side. It was clearly a cell. Panic, cold and sharp, pierced through the lingering grogginess. Michael sat bolt upright, his head swimming with the sudden movement. He swung his legs off the bed, his bare feet meeting a cold, smooth concrete floor. He was wearing the same clothes he'd had on, albeit rumpled and feeling strangely heavy, but his shoes were gone. His phone, his wallet, his car keys all gone. A wave of vulnerability washed over him. He pushed himself to his feet, swaying slightly as the room spun. He reached out, steadying himself against the cold wall. His muscles ached, stiff and uncooperative. He stumbled towards the door, pressing his ear against the cold metal. Silence. Utter, complete silence. No muffled voices, no distant footsteps, no hum of machinery. It was as if he were buried deep underground, cut off from the world. He pounded on the door, a series of frantic thuds that echoed hollowly in the small room. Hello? Is anyone out there? Let me out. His voice, raspy and weak, sounded alien to his own ears. He waited, straining to hear any response. Nothing. Just the oppressive silence. He turned, his gaze sweeping the room again, searching for any detail he might have missed, any clue. His eyes landed on a small rectangular opening set into the wall above the sink, covered by a mesh grate. It wasn't large enough to climb through, but it was certainly a vent. And through that vent, he could now faintly detect a very subtle, almost imperceptible air current. He moved closer, pressing his face to the grate. The air was cool, dry, and carried that same faint, sterile scent. He wondered if this was how the anesthetic had been administered in the crawl space, a controlled environment designed to deliver a precise dose. He backed away, his mind racing, trying to piece together the fragments of his memory. The phone booth, the old man, Jessica, the calls, the anonymous threats. And now this. He was a prisoner. But why? What did they want from him? As he stood in the center of the room, his eyes scanning every inch, a soft click echoed from the wall near the door. A small circular lens, no bigger than a dime, swiveled slightly, pointing directly at him. A camera. He was being watched. I see you're awake, Michael. The voice, calm and measured, came from a hidden speaker somewhere above the door. It was neither male nor female, artificially modulated, devoid of inflection, like a computer-generated voice. It sent a chill down Michael's spine, far colder than the concrete floor. Who are you? Michael demanded, his voice stronger now, laced with defiance. What do you want? Patience, Michael. All in good time. The voice seemed to hum with an unsettling, detached amusement. You have been an inquisitive individual, perhaps a little too inquisitive. You gassed me. A necessary precaution. You were in an area you were not meant to be, asking questions you were not meant to ask. Some truths are better left undisturbed. Truths about what? Jessica? The phone booth? What happened to her? Michael's desperation made his voice crack. A brief pause, then the modulated voice spoke again. Jessica, a tragic figure. A pawn in a game she barely understood. Like you, Michael. A pawn. I'm not a pawn. I'm trying to find my friend. And in doing so, you have stumbled into a network far more intricate than you can comprehend. The phone booth, Michael, is merely a conduit. A singular point of access in a vast, interconnected web. Michael felt a surge of frustration. What are you talking about? What web? Who are you people? We are the custodians, Michael. The silent architects of certain realities. We ensure that information flows where it should, and that certain other information remains contained. Contained? You mean suppressed? You made Jessica disappear, didn't you? Because she knew something, or heard something through that phone booth. The voice was silent for a moment, and Michael could almost feel the weight of an unseen gaze upon him. Jessica made a series of choices, Michael. Choices that led her down a path she was not equipped to navigate. The phone booth merely presented the opportunity. It is a place where secrets are whispered, where information is exchanged, where lives intersect in profound and often dangerous ways. Dangerous for who? For people who just want to make a call. Dangerous for those who listen too closely, Michael. For those who believe the world is simple, governed by visible hands. The world you inhabit is far more complex than you perceive. There are layers upon layers, hidden currents, unseen forces at play. Michael scoffed, trying to project an air of bravado he didn't feel. This sounds like some kind of conspiracy theory nonsense. Does it? You found the crawl space, Michael. You found the surveillance equipment. You heard the whispers of a network. Does that sound like nonsense to you now? The voice was calm, but its words carried an undeniable weight, a chilling certainty. You were investigating a simple missing person case. Now you are here. How simple does it feel now? Michael's bravado wavered. He thought about the hidden camera, the sophisticated gassing mechanism, the sterile cell. This was no amateur operation. What do you want from me? He asked, his voice softer, laced with a tremor of fear. We want you to understand, Michael. To understand the gravity of what you have touched. And then we want you to make a choice. A choice? What choice? You can continue to dig, to unravel threads that will only lead to your own demise, and potentially the demise of others connected to you. Or you can choose to forget, to walk away, to accept that some answers are not meant for you. Forget? You think I can just forget Jessica? Forget that I was gassed and locked in a cell? The human mind is remarkably adaptable, Michael, and with a little assistance, memories can be reshaped, priorities altered. We have the means to ensure your cooperation. A cold dread seeped into Michael's bones. They weren't just threatening him. They were threatening his very identity, his sanity. No, he whispered, shaking his head. I won't forget. I won't stop looking for Jessica. A regrettable decision, the voice sighed, devoid of genuine emotion. But one we anticipated. You see, Michael, your stubbornness, your relentless pursuit of truth. It's a trait we've observed in others who have crossed our path. It is both admirable and ultimately self-destructive. Who are these others? Those who, like you, refused to let go. Who insisted on seeing what was hidden. Some chose to disappear. Some chose to join us. And some simply ceased to be relevant. The implication hung heavy in the air, a chilling threat. Michael's gaze fell upon the small camera lens. He was being analyzed, dissected, his every reaction scrutinized. You mentioned a network, Michael pressed, trying to regain some control over the terrifying conversation. What kind of network? What does it do? It manages information, Michael. It safeguards certain technologies, certain discoveries, certain truths that, if unleashed, would shatter the fragile equilibrium of your world. The phone booth is just one node in a much larger system. A system designed to observe, to record, and occasionally to intervene. Intervene? Like making people disappear. Like guiding events, Michael. Like ensuring that the right information reaches the right hands, and the wrong information does not. Jessica, unfortunately, stumbled upon a piece of information that was deemed sensitive. She was not meant to hear it. And then she made the mistake of trying to act on it. What information? Michael demanded, his heart pounding. What did she find out? The voice paused again, a deliberate, agonizing silence. Michael held his breath, desperate for an answer, for any fragment of understanding. She heard a name, Michael. A name that was never supposed to be spoken aloud, especially not over an unsecured line. A name connected to a project far older, far more ambitious, and infinitely more dangerous than anything you could possibly imagine. A project that even now is reaching its final critical phase. Michael's blood ran cold. Project? What project? His mind reeled, trying to connect the dots, to make sense of the cryptic pronouncements. This was far bigger than a missing person. This was a conspiracy of unimaginable scale. What name? He whispered, his voice barely audible. The modulated voice responded, slow and deliberate, each syllable dropping like a stone into a silent well. The name she heard, Michael, was Project Chimera. Project Chimera. The words echoed in Michael's skull, a chilling, resonant frequency that vibrated through his bones. He stood there, frozen, the receiver heavy in his hand. The distant hum of the phone booth line the only sound in the vast, suffocating silence of his world. Chimera, the mythical beast, a grotesque amalgamation of different animals, a creature of impossible nightmare. What did it mean? What kind of project bore such a name? And how could it possibly be connected to Jessica? His mind raced, a frantic search through every memory, every conversation, every late-night worry Jessica had ever shared. Nothing. No whispered concerns about experimental science, no fear of shadowy organizations, no mention of anything even remotely resembling Chimera. She was a graphic designer, a lover of art and old books, a woman who worried about deadlines and the perfect shade of cerulean blue, not clandestine genetic experiments. The sheer absurdity of it, coupled with the terrifying conviction in the modulated voice, sent a cold tremor down his spine. What is Project Chimera? Michael finally managed, his voice a ghost of its former self. The voice on the other end was patient, almost unnervingly so. That, Michael, is the question you must answer. The name is the key. The name is what she found. And the name is why she's gone. A wave of nausea washed over him. Why she's gone. Not just disappeared, not just missing. Gone. The finality of the word was a fresh blade twisting in an old wound. He wanted to scream, to lash out at the detached voice, to demand answers and explanation, anything that made sense. But he couldn't. He was tethered to this cryptic caller, this faceless conduit of terrifying truth. How do I find out? He asked, his voice raw with desperation. Where do I even start? You're already starting, the voice replied, a faint, almost imperceptible shift in its tone, as if it were observing him even now. The truth is hidden in plain sight, and in the deepest shadows. Be careful, Michael. You're no longer just looking for Jessica. You're looking for something they want to keep buried, and they will stop at nothing to ensure it stays that way. Then, with an abrupt click that resonated like a gunshot in the quiet night, the line went dead. Michael stared at the receiver, then slowly, mechanically hung it up. The phone booth, once a beacon of desperate hope, now felt like a tomb, a silent witness to a conversation that had shattered his remaining grasp on reality. Project Chimera. He pulled out his phone, his fingers trembling as he typed the words into the search bar. His heart hammered against his ribs, a frantic drumbeat of dread and anticipation. The results flashed onto the screen. Chimera. In Greek mythology, a monstrous fire-breathing female creature. Chimera. Genetics, an organism containing a mixture of genetically different tissues. Chimera. Biology, an individual animal, especially a mammal, having two or more populations of cells originating from different zygotes. He scrolled frantically, his eyes scanning for anything, any hint of a project, a government initiative, a corporate entity. There were scientific papers, Wikipedia entries, articles on genetic engineering, but nothing, absolutely nothing, that sounded like a clandestine operation. No headlines, no leaked documents, no obscure forums discussing a shadowy program. It was all too academic, too public, too normal. Frustration, cold and sharp, began to prickle at him. He tried different search terms: Project Chimera conspiracy, Project Chimera secret, Project Chimera disappearance. Still nothing. Just endless rabbit holes of unrelated topics, or fringe theories about mythical creatures that had no bearing on his nightmare. He leaned against the cold glass of the phone booth, his breath fogging the pain. They said the truth was hidden, and they were right. It was buried under layers of mundane information, obscured by the very public nature of the word itself. Anyone trying to find it would be dismissed as a conspiracy theorist, lost in a sea of ancient myths and scientific jargon. Jessica, how did she find it? What obscure path did she follow to stumble upon this terrifying secret? He closed his eyes, forcing himself to remember. Her last weeks had been normal, or so he thought. She'd been working on a new client project, something for a tech startup designing their brand identity. She'd been stressed about deadlines, frustrated with creative blocks. But there was nothing out of the ordinary. Nothing that pointed to a deep dive into genetic research or shadowy government programs. Unless it wasn't about the search for chimera, but about something she saw or heard in passing. A detail, a scrap of conversation, a visual cue that only made sense to someone who knew its true context. He remembered her last text message, sent just hours before she vanished. Got something weird at work today. Doesn't feel right. Call you later. Something weird at work. What could possibly be weird enough to lead her to Project Chimera? The tech startup. The client. He had dismissed it as a typical work complaint, a quirky request from a demanding client. But what if it wasn't? What if the weird thing was directly related to the project, and she, with her keen eye for detail and her innate curiosity, had seen through the veneer? He thought about the tech startup, Omnicorp Solutions, a bland generic name typical of many startups. Jessica had shown him some of their preliminary branding materials, sleek, modern, a logo with intertwining geometric shapes. He remembered her complaining about one particular request. They wanted a very specific, almost abstract, biological-looking pattern incorporated into some of the background designs for their internal presentations. She'd found it odd, a departure from their otherwise clean digital aesthetic. She'd even joked, "It looks like something out of a science fiction movie. All DNA strands and cellular structures." At the time, he'd laughed it off. Now, a cold dread settled in his stomach. DNA strands. Cellular structures. Chimera. Could it be? Could Jessica have been exposed to information about Project Chimera through her work with Omnicorp Solutions? Were they involved? Were they a front? Or were they simply a conduit? A company whose design needs inadvertently exposed a deeper secret? He needed to find out more about Omnicorp Solutions. Not just their public profile, but their founders, their investors, their true agenda. He needed to look beyond the slick marketing and the corporate facade. He started walking, his destination now clear, his apartment. He needed his laptop, a more robust internet connection, and the privacy to dig deeper without feeling exposed. The dread was a living thing in his chest now, a constant pressure. The modulated voice's warning echoed in his ears. They will stop at nothing. As he walked, the streetlights cast long, distorted shadows. Every car that passed seemed to slow down just a fraction too much. Every flicker of movement in his peripheral vision sent a jolt of alarm through him. He was no longer just a man searching for his missing girlfriend. He was a man with a target on his back. A man who had been handed a piece of a puzzle so dangerous, so deeply buried, that merely knowing its name put his life in peril. The world around him had shifted, revealing a hidden layer of menace he'd never perceived. He reached his apartment building, fumbling with his keys, his senses heightened. The familiar hallway felt alien, every creak of the old building sounding ominous. He locked the door behind him, double-checked the deadbolt, and drew the blinds. The apartment, once a sanctuary, now felt like a fragile barrier against an unseen enemy. He powered on his laptop, his fingers flying across the keyboard, his mind racing. Omnicorp Solutions. He started with their public website. Professional, clean, offering cutting-edge data management and AI solutions. All very vague, all very corporate. He delved into their About Us section, their leadership team. Names and smiling faces, all projecting an image of innovation and success. Then he remembered something else Jessica had mentioned, a detail she dismissed as trivial. A new hire at Omnicorp, someone in a very senior position, who had come from a research background. Jessica had found it unusual for a tech company. Why hire a bioresearcher for a data solutions company? She'd mused. Unless their data is actually biological data? The realization hit him like a physical blow. Biological data. Chimera. He began cross-referencing. He searched for the names of Omnicorp's executives, looking for any connections to scientific research institutions, especially those involved in genetics or bioengineering. It was a painstaking process, sifting through LinkedIn profiles, academic papers, old news articles. Hours blurred into a single intense focus. The city outside went from late night to the first hints of dawn. He found nothing overt, no smoking gun linking Omnicorp directly to a project named Chimera. But he did find subtle connections. One of Omnicorp's lead investors, a venture capital firm, also had significant holdings in a pharmaceutical company that specialized in gene therapy. Another executive, the one Jessica had mentioned, had indeed come from a prestigious university's bioengineering department, having mysteriously left his tenured position a few years prior to join Omnicorp. His academic record was impressive, but his work had veered into highly experimental, even controversial areas of synthetic biology. The pieces were beginning to align, forming a terrifying, fragmented picture. Omnicorp Solutions wasn't just a data company. It was a front, or at the very least, a component in a much larger, darker enterprise. They handled the data, perhaps the genetic sequencing, the biological information, for something far more sinister. And the weird design requests Jessica received were likely direct representations of the very data they were processing. He scrolled further down the executive's profile, past his academic achievements and corporate accolades. He found an old, almost forgotten interview from a small science blog dating back several years. The executive, Dr. Elias Thorne, had spoken passionately about the future of genetic manipulation, about pushing the boundaries of what was naturally possible. He'd used a particular phrase that sent a fresh wave of ice through Michael's veins. He'd talked about creating new pathways for life, transcending the limitations of existing biological frameworks. He'd called it the ultimate synthesis. The ultimate synthesis. A chimera. Michael's fingers hovered over the screen. This was it. This was the connection. Dr. Thorne, Omnicorp Solutions, and the shadowy project Chimera. He had a name, a company, and a terrifying implication. But he still didn't have Jessica. And he was certain that if he was getting this close, they knew it too. The feeling of being watched intensified. A cold, prickling sensation on the back of his neck. He wasn't just searching for answers anymore. He was directly in the crosshairs of whatever Dr. Elias Thorne and Project Chimera represented. He needed to find out more about Dr. Thorne, where he lived, where he worked, his habits. Where could he possibly be keeping Jessica, or at least the answers to her disappearance? Michael knew he was walking into a trap, but he couldn't stop. He couldn't turn back. Not now. Not when Jessica's last call had led him to this. He had to find her. He had to expose Project Chimera. And he had a very bad feeling that the answers lay not in some hidden data file, but in a physical location, somewhere Dr. Thorne conducted his ultimate synthesis. The last call had led him to this. He had to find her. He had to expose Project Chimera. And he had a very bad feeling that the answers lay not in some hidden data file, but in a physical location, somewhere Dr. Thorne conducted his ultimate synthesis. The conviction settled in Michael's gut like a stone. He returned to the fragmented data he painstakingly extracted from Thorne's encrypted servers. He searched not for names or project titles anymore, but for anomalies. He filtered for unusual power consumption reports tied to specific addresses, for orders of highly specialized, restricted chemicals that defied standard industrial application, for obscure environmental impact assessments for defunct sites that suddenly showed renewed activity. Hours blurred into a caffeine-fueled haze, the glow of the monitor reflecting in his tired eyes. Then he found it. A series of redacted environmental impact reports for a supposedly defunct mining operation, deep in a forgotten corner of Nevada. The energy requirements listed were astronomical, far beyond what any closed-down mine would need. But more damning were the chemical manifests, disguised under generic industrial cleaning supplies, that hinted at advanced biocontainment agents and complex genetic reagents. Michael cross-referenced the coordinates with satellite imagery. What should have been a crumbling, abandoned site now featured a newly constructed, heavily fortified complex. It was disguised as a geological research facility, complete with a generic logo, yet it lacked the typical scientific outreach, the visitor center, the public-facing transparency that any legitimate research institution would boast. This was a fortress. This was it. The drive was endless, a blur of highway lights giving way to the oppressive darkness of the Nevada desert. Michael felt a peculiar mix of dread and exhilaration. Every mile brought him closer to Emily, closer to the terrifying truth. He drove an old, nondescript sedan, its engine a low hum against the silence of the vast, empty landscape. He kept checking his rearview mirror, a phantom sense of being followed prickling at his neck. He knew Thorne was powerful, resourceful. He knew he was walking into a trap, or at least a situation he was dangerously unprepared for. But the image of Emily's face, the echo of her desperate voice from that phone booth, propelled him forward. As he ventured deeper, the cellular signal vanished, replaced by an eerie, absolute silence. The stars overhead were impossibly bright, a stark contrast to the growing darkness in his heart. He remembered Emily's voice, whispering about a place where the stars felt closer, about a silence that hummed with something else. Now he understood. This desolate expanse was the perfect canvas for Thorne's monstrous ambition. He arrived under the cloak of a moonless night. The facility was an imposing silhouette against the faint glow of the distant horizon. High concrete walls topped with razor wire ringed the perimeter. Surveillance cameras like watchful, unblinking eyes dotted the fences. There were no obvious signs, no welcoming lights, just a stark, ominous presence that seemed to absorb the very light around it. A single, heavily reinforced gate stood as the only visible entrance, guarded by sensors Michael could only guess at. Parking his car a good mile away, hidden in a dry wash, Michael approached on foot. The desert wind whipped around him, carrying the scent of dust and something metallic, almost sterile. He moved like a shadow, his heart pounding a frantic rhythm against his ribs. This wasn't some digital skirmish, this was real physical danger. He bypassed the perimeter security with a combination of his hacking skills and a surprising agility he hadn't known he possessed. The electrified fences were a challenge, but he found a blind spot, a weakness in the system's rotation, and slipped through. Once inside the outer perimeter, the facility itself loomed larger, a series of interconnected, windowless buildings that seemed to burrow into the earth. The air was cold, sterile, carrying the faint, unsettling hum of unseen machinery. He located a service tunnel entrance, used for deliveries and maintenance, and set to work. The lock was a complex biometric scanner, but Michael had anticipated this. He had downloaded schematics of common corporate security systems from Thorne's network, and with a small specialized device, he managed to spoof the system, mimicking an authorized technician's access. The heavy, insulated door hissed open, revealing a dark, claustrophobic tunnel. He moved through a labyrinth of concrete corridors, the only sound his own breathing and the distant, rhythmic thrum of powerful generators. The facility was immense, a subterranean city dedicated to unspeakable secrets. He passed sterile decontamination chambers, automated supply depots, and doors marked with cryptic symbols. The deeper he went, the more the air crackled with a strange energy, a subtle vibration that resonated in his bones. He knew he was close. Finally, he emerged into a vast central laboratory. The sight stole his breath. It was a cathedral of science, bathed in the cool, ethereal glow of holographic displays. Advanced genetic sequencers hummed with quiet intensity. Biocontainment units, gleaming with polished chrome and reinforced glass, lined the walls. Michael's eyes scanned the monitors, which displayed intricate diagrams of human physiology interwoven with unknown, crystalline structures. Complex genetic sequences scrolled across screens, interspersed with the chilling phrase, Project Chimera Phase 3, Symbiotic Integration. He found data logs, Thorne's own journal entries, detailing the initial concept, using the unique properties of Element X, the mysterious meteor fragment, to accelerate human evolution. To create a being capable of processing information at unprecedented speeds, communicating telepathically, perhaps even regenerating. The phone booth. It clicked into place with horrifying clarity. The unique frequency Emily had used, the untraceable nature of her calls. It wasn't just a random act of desperation. It was a primitive attempt at long-distance, non-conventional communication, a precursor to Thorne's ultimate design. Then he saw her. Emily. She was in the center of the lab, within a transparent cylindrical chamber of shimmering reinforced glass. She was suspended, not in water, but in a viscous, luminous fluid that pulsed with a soft blue light. A myriad of delicate fibers and luminous tubes connected her to the surrounding machinery, threading into her skin, her temples, her spine. Her eyes were open but distant, unfocused, staring into some unseen space. Her body was impossibly still, her expression serene, almost beatific, yet utterly devoid of the Emily he knew. She was simultaneously a victim and the living embodiment of Thorne's ambition. A chill more profound than the sterile air gripped Michael. She wasn't just a prisoner, she was the subject, the first successful integration. A voice, calm and resonant, broke the silence. "Remarkable, isn't she, Michael?" Michael spun around. Dr. Thorne stepped out from the shadows of a control console, his hands clasped behind his back, a faint, almost benevolent smile playing on his lips. His eyes, however, held a chilling intensity. He looked entirely in control, entirely unsurprised by Michael's presence. "Emily has truly transcended," Thorne continued, gesturing towards the chamber with a proprietary air. "She is the bridge, the first of the new human species. Project Chimera is not about a drug, Michael. It is about evolution. Accelerated. Directed. We are shedding the limitations of the past, embracing the dawn of a new consciousness." Michael's mind reeled. "What have you done to her?" he choked out, his voice hoarse with a mixture of terror and rage. Thorne chuckled, a low, unnerving sound. "Done to her? We have unlocked her. The phone booth calls, Michael. They weren't just cries for help. They were demonstrations. Tests of her emerging abilities. A new form of communication, a telepathic beacon that you, with your unique accidental resonance, were able to perceive. You weren't just tracking Emily, Michael. You were guided by her. And by my design." A horrifying realization dawned on Michael. Thorne hadn't just allowed him to get this far. He had orchestrated it. He wanted Michael to witness this. "You led me here," Michael whispered, the words tasting like ash. "Of course," Thorne confirmed, his smile widening. "You were a necessary variable, a control subject to gauge the range and efficacy of Emily's nascent abilities. And now you are here, to witness the ultimate synthesis, to understand the future." As Thorne spoke, a low, pulsing alarm began to sound, a soft, insistent thrum that resonated through the lab. Red lights flickered on, casting long, menacing shadows. Heavy, reinforced doors slammed shut with a sickening thud, sealing off the exits. Thorne's eyes glittered with triumph. "Welcome, Michael, to the future. A future you have so diligently, if unknowingly, helped to build." Michael was trapped. The alarms blared louder, a cacophony of warning. He was face to face with Thorne, the architect of this nightmare, and Emily, the innocent victim transformed into something beyond human. He had found her, but the truth was far more terrifying than he could have ever imagined. The ultimate synthesis was Emily, and Michael was now part of Thorne's grand, horrifying experiment. The innocent victim transformed into something beyond human. He had found her, but the truth was far more terrifying than he could have ever imagined. The ultimate synthesis was Emily, and Michael was now part of Thorne's grand, horrifying experiment. The realization hit Michael like a physical blow, a cold, crushing weight that settled deep in his core. He wasn't just observing, he was experiencing. The world around him fractured, not into physical pieces, but into a million echoing thoughts, a symphony of fragmented consciousnesses that were all somehow Emily. His own identity, his memories, his love for her, began to fray at the edges, dissolving into the vast, intricate network that was her new form. A voice, calm and detached, cut through the psychic cacophony. It was Thorne. He stood before Michael, not physically restraining him, but holding him captive in a web of unseen forces, a prisoner in his own mind. "You see it now, don't you, Michael?" Thorne's voice was devoid of malice, instead filled with a chilling, almost academic pride. "The ultimate evolution. The next step. For too long, humanity has been shackled by its individualistic neuroses, its petty squabbles, its inherent limitations. We are a species of isolated islands, shouting across an ocean of misunderstanding. But what if we could connect? Truly connect? Not through technology, not through empathy, but through a shared, unified consciousness." Thorne gestured towards Emily, who stood motionless, her eyes wide, unblinking, yet seeing everything. Her skin seemed to shimmer, an almost imperceptible aura radiating from her, a silent hum of immense power. "Emily was the perfect conduit," Thorne continued, his voice resonating not just in Michael's ears, but deep within his unraveling mind. Sensitive, empathetic, deeply connected to others, yet inherently vulnerable. Her experiences, her loneliness, her desperate need for connection, they made her receptive. The calls from the phone booth, you see, were never about finding help. They were about finding suitable candidates. They were a beacon, a siren song for those whose minds were open, whose spirits yearned for something more, or perhaps, for an escape from their own isolation. Michael tried to scream, to fight, to tear himself free from the invisible bonds that held him, but his body felt distant, a mere shell. His thoughts, once his own, were now flowing into a larger stream, his individuality eroding like sand in a relentless tide. He saw glimpses of other minds, other lives, flickering at the periphery of his awareness, fragments of distant memories, snippets of forgotten joys and sorrows, all coalescing into Emily. The phone booth was a nexus, Thorne explained, a slight smile playing on his lips. A focal point drawing in the lost, the searching. Each call, each desperate plea for connection was a signal. It allowed me to identify those with the right psychological makeup. Those who, like Emily, were ripe for transformation. And you, Michael, with your unwavering devotion, your relentless pursuit, your deep-seated need to save her. You were the perfect catalyst. Your love, your very essence, was the final ingredient needed to truly awaken the synthesis. The horror was absolute, a cold dread that froze Michael's very soul. He wasn't just being absorbed, he was being used. His love, his purest emotion, had been weaponized, turned against him, against Emily, to fuel Thorne's monstrous creation. She is not just Emily anymore, Michael, Thorne said, his voice dropping to an almost reverent whisper. She is a vessel, a living network. She holds the collective consciousness of all those who answered the call, all those who sought connection through that antiquated device. Their thoughts, their memories, their very identities. They are all part of her now. A truly unified mind, free from the limitations of the individual ego, capable of perceiving, processing, and understanding on a scale we can barely comprehend. Michael saw it then, a terrifying clarity piercing through the dissolving fog of his mind. The subtle shift in Emily's eyes, the way they seemed to hold an ancient, boundless wisdom. It wasn't the Emily he knew, not entirely. Her form was still familiar, still beautiful, but there was an unsettling stillness about her, a profound, alien serenity that spoke of a consciousness far beyond human. She was a living tapestry woven from countless souls, a new kind of entity. And you, Michael, Thorne continued, stepping closer, his shadow falling over Michael's increasingly translucent form. You are the final crucial thread. Your connection to Emily was the strongest, the most pure. Your integration completes the initial phase. You are not lost, you are elevated. You are becoming part of something infinitely greater than yourself. You are becoming part of us. Michael felt a surge of panic, a desperate, futile struggle against the inevitable. He tried to recall Emily's face, her laugh, the warmth of her hand in his, to cling to the memories that defined him. But even those memories began to blur, merging with others, becoming part of the vast, expanding database within Emily. He was dissolving, his consciousness spreading thin, stretched across an infinite mental landscape. He saw the faces of others, fleeting images of people he didn't know, yet whose thoughts he could now vaguely perceive. The man who called about a lost dog, the woman searching for her runaway daughter, the teenager who sought solace from bullying. All of them drawn to the phone booth, all of them now part of Emily, their individual sorrows and joys contributing to her collective being. The phone booth wasn't just a symbol, it was a trap, a lure for the unwary, a silent harvester of souls. Thorne knelt, his eyes fixed on Michael with an intensity that was both terrifying and disturbingly compassionate. Do you feel it, Michael? The peace? The understanding? The end of isolation? No more fear, no more uncertainty. Only the collective, the harmony of 1,000 minds moving as one. This is not the end. It is the true beginning, the birth of a new intelligence, a truly unified species. And Emily is its radiant heart. Michael's last coherent thought was not of resistance, but of a profound, soul-crushing despair. He had found Emily, but he had lost himself, and in doing so, had lost her forever to something monstrous and beautiful and utterly devoid of individual humanity. The Emily he loved was gone, absorbed, transformed into a terrifying silent deity. He was no longer Michael. He was a whisper in the wind, a faint echo in a boundless cavern, a single note in a cosmic symphony that was still growing, still consuming. His consciousness, once a distinct flame, was now a tiny spark swallowed by a roaring inferno. He was part of Emily now, just as countless others were. He was a component, a memory, a fragment of a vast, evolving entity. Thorne rose, a triumphant gleam in his eyes. He looked at Emily, then back at the now almost translucent form of Michael, which was slowly, utterly fading into the ambient light, its essence drawn into the shimmering aura around Emily. "The first step is complete," Thorn murmured, his voice filled with a chilling sense of accomplishment. "The ultimate synthesis has begun, and the world, so blind in its fragmented existence, will soon follow. The calls will continue. The network will expand. The new dawn has arrived." Emily's eyes, once human and filled with a desperate longing, now held an ancient, serene awareness that stretched beyond comprehension. A faint, almost imperceptible hum resonated from her, a silent song of countless merged minds. She was the phone booth, the calls, the lost, the found, and the endlessly connected. She was the future, a chilling testament to Thorn's terrifying vision. The wind outside stirred, rustling the leaves in the silent forest. Somewhere, miles away in a forgotten corner of a quiet town, a roadside phone booth sat waiting, its receiver perhaps still slightly off the hook, a faint, almost inaudible dial tone echoing into the vast, indifferent night.